space. A swirling enigma of... Okay, yeah, it's another astrology video. You guys saw the thumbnail. You know what we're doing today. It's one that people have been waiting for. We've only got 2 left after today, that being Sagittarius and Taurus, but today we are hopping right on in to Scorpio, one that has been highly requested in the comments. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and hop right into it. Welcome to the channel. My name's Thesterninator, but my friends call me Stern. And today we have the tremendous pleasure of continuing our astrology signs as Pokemon series with Scorpio. This one threw me for a bit of a loop, not gonna lie. And I know I have a lot of people in the comments betting that their sign will be last. Well, Scorpio, I guess you are being thrown out of the pool with this one, which I am very excited for, as I think it's hitting up there with one of my top favorite designs. Being that we already have a couple Scorpion-based Pokemon, I decided to kind of move away from those aspects, keep them as reference, but not fully drop into them. So Pokemon like Scorpio, Drapion, Gligar, and Gliscor, I knew I had to make some moves that differentiate from those designs. I decided on a more rounded shape to distinguish it from Scorpio. So I moved the body to a more upright position rather than a crawling one, which ended up informing a lot of the design later. It's funny, when I work on these, I'll tend to have an idea, go into it, design it, and as I'm going, I start to understand where I want to take it with the future interpretations and the inspiration. So I end up kind of redoing that initial design or focusing more heavily on those areas than I initially thought that I would. The next aspect to take on came with the claws and tail. Scorpions have pretty basic claws that had not been taken into account in these other designs like Scorpio. Scorpio had almost like these little stabbers, wherein I wanted to give this design something that felt more water cannon-esque. I was also able to balance out the head shape with these larger forearm appendages, which ended up working out really well. It makes it feel less like it's going to topple over and less super hyper cutesy. It gives it some bulk to it. And being that Scorpios are known for their ambition, even to a fault, I wanted to find a way to capture this energy in the pose. So I used the expression of this Pokemon to convey that want for battle. It has that cannon aimed right at the player and is squinting an eye to better aim. But if you know anything about marksmanship, you may notice that it has the wrong eye closed. This is something that a lot of young kids do when they're playing games like War Outside, is they'll know to close an eye, but not specifically which one to close. So I wanted to capture that innocent and ambitious type of energy, wanting so hard to get it right, but still kind of moving in the wrong direction. Speaking of the eyes, I landed on this really fun eye shape that wraps around the head in an interesting way that I thought gave off that buggy motif while also having reason behind it. They remind me actually a lot of those Spy Kids 3 glasses, which are weird and goofy, and very much the type of thing that an ambitious kid or young Pokemon might wear. Strategy also comes into play, and given that this Pokemon's smaller size and want for battle, it would make some sense to give it eyes that could scroll to the back of its head. I can totally see someone trying to sneak up on this Pokemon, only for those eyes to roll back and it see them, turn around and begin blasting them with a bubble beam. I feel like the whole design took on this kind of super soaker motif, like a lot of kids who run around playing airsoft or with super soakers or paintballs, so I thought that would be a really fun aspect to bring into the rest of the design. So I gave it this pattern that both mimics a light camo and a burst of bubbly sea foam. Ultimately, the whole design came together in a fun way that took into account a few different areas of inspiration, many of which I wasn't thinking about when I first went into this design. I knew that I had to make a water scorpion, being that Scorpio is a water sign, and I thought, how do I capture that other than just making it blue? And bringing in that seafoam type texture really helped out a lot with balancing out this water typing with something that actually works, and making that bubble almost like a camo-esque pattern. I feel really informed not just the typing of the Pokemon, but the entire vibe and energy that I wanted to portray in it. That, along like I said, with the eyes, really gave this energy of that young kid who really wants to just like play war, is super ambitious, super strategy focused, and I think that really captures the Scorpio energy with those aspects. So here we have him. This is our new Scorpio Pokemon, Hypeon. Hypeon, the water bug Pokemon. Hypeon love to roam about the coastline in search of a battle. While their stature may be small, their ambition is not something to be trifled with. They're expert strategists, even freshly hatched, and will use their cannon-like claws and spout-like tail to blast away any would-be attackers. Luckily, this want for battle will also put them off their guard, as firing their cannons often leads to recoil that lands them stuck on their backs. I'm such a fan of these little guys. I wanted to give the shiny something that allowed it to blend in with the stony outcroppings of a region, so it has that grayish color once again to kind of attach itself to that camouflage tactical vibe, while still bringing in that water typing with the blue eyes and blue cannon, which I think really shine against that color motif. It's not very tall, it's about mid-height to a normal trainer, and it has the ability Swift Swim, Torrent, and Sniper. Sniper being one that really comes into play in the later designs. It is a water type, given that Scorpio is a water sign, but I still wanted to bring in that Aries energy, so it is very combative of a Pokemon. Next up, I really wanted to dive into that combative type of personality with this form. While Scorpios are known to be determined and fearless, they can also be obsessive and intense. Those aren't necessarily bad qualities to have, as many turn those towards positive pursuits, and I wanted to capture that in this design. I ended up second guessing myself a lot on this. Maybe it was the asymmetry of it all, or the want to bring in so many elements without losing focus on the prime prompt of Scorpio. There was just so many directions that I felt I could go, and they all felt like the right one. It seemed very on brand for a Scorpio-based design, actually. I wanted to remain loyal to the prompt, but began obsessing over these small details and trying to strategize where to go from there, and I eventually had to take my own advice and bring in that Scorpio mindset. Having all of this and learning to just let it be. And I think that allowed me to be more informed by the design rather than try and bend it to my own will. Standing tall, this Pokemon now uses its tail, which was merely prehensile in its previous form, to aim at its foes, focus more energy on a more widespread blaster approach. Their claws have diminished into these smaller and more versatile hand shapes. I think this adaptation fits well as Scorpios are seen as intuitive and adaptable in their own ways. When given the time and space to make things work out in their own way and time, they tend to be more successful. Looking for the best logical outcome, this Pokemon would have evolved to steady itself, and rather use these 3 blasters, it focuses its energy into a much larger and more powerful tail bazooka. Given this balance between passion and intuition, I wanted to make sure that the design felt steady, and I modeled the stance off of a turret, like the ones found in some of my favorite video games, Halo being top of that list. I also took into account a natural advantage of Scorpions, which is that they have 3 eyes. I think that's super interesting. If you didn't know, they have 3 eyes. The top one is used for sensing daylight, but I'm gonna ignore that for now so that we can focus on how cool these goggles are about to turn out. I took inspiration from military goggles and designs across the board here, even looking at the Scorpion tank from, again, my favorite game, Halo. I used the goggles much more like aiming devices than anything else. I took inspiration from military goggles and video game accents to make it better equip shooters. The goggles are more reminiscent of Widowmaker's from the Overwatch series, which glide down over her face to better lock onto her target. I could talk all day about Overwatch's superb character design and Junkrat supremacy as the perfect option for those like me who go for the spray and pray explosion method. But I'll digress. The pose of this Pokemon was a ton of fun for me because it allowed me to experiment with a body type for Pokemon that I'm not used to. I did a Scorpion Centipede monstrosity for the Elden Ring mashup series, but this had to fit a very different vibe and style. This had to feel like it could be your friend and give off almost that big brother type of energy, while still sticking to that super soaker motif. That was a little bit of a tongue twister. I wanted to stick to that motif because we established it in the previous design, and I established it that way because I knew the direction that I wanted to go. I wanted bubbles to be a big part of this design. I wanted those goggles to be something that was very focused as a main point of this design. I wanted to keep that camo. There were aspects that I knew I wanted to carry through, and I think that I was pretty successful in doing that. I think that it fits really well to the motif, to the design, it fits the prompt, and I'm really happy with that. Overall, I think the combination of parts worked out well, and if it's a Pokemon that I can see smiling at you, proud that it helped you become the Pokemon League champion while squeezing the life out of you in a massive Scorpion hug, then I feel like that's a success. That's really what I look for in these designs. I know I've mentioned before, oh, Pokemon should feel like they can be your friends, but ultimately when creating these designs, I like to imagine how would this Pokemon respond in this situation? It sounds hokey and it sounds dumb, but that's kind of the main point that I go for. Is this a Pokemon that I could see someone genuinely having as their partner Pokemon? Is it a design that someone could be seen happily engaging in a hug or happily engaging in just celebrating together in a victory? If that doesn't fit, if that doesn't match, then I feel like I'm going the wrong way. It can be as big and beefy of a Pokemon as possible, or as lean and slender of a design as I want, but if it doesn't feel like it could be a teammate, I feel like it doesn't work. And that's kind of my main design practice for these. Hypersur, the water bug Pokemon. Hypersur are aggressive beasts of the beach and will make sure that everyone knows where their territory starts and ends. The cannons disperse pressurized water at the power of a fire hose, and their aim is impeccable. While many veer from the rocky outcrops of the Kostawis region in fear of running into a Hypersur, those that have managed to befriend this species have noted how mindful they can be of their intense energy. Hypersur can become loyal companions who are always sure to take others into account and lead any team with a smile. I am absolutely in love with this Scorpio himbo beach dwelling thing. I just love it so much. It ends up becoming one of my favorite designs that we have so far. The name Hypersur obviously is a reference to the term high pressure, used with water cannons, water spouts, things of that nature. For the shiny, I brought in more of that blackish gray type vibe, really emphasizing that steel type and its ability to kind of blend into the rocky outcrops. It's much taller than your average player, standing at 7'4", has the same abilities as its previous version, but has taken on that water and steel type. So it's become a lot more durable in its time, becoming much more cannon-like, and we're not done with it yet. I don't know, I love this thing so much. He's so fun, he has such a fun expression, and you can see that he's now aiming correctly, which is different from its previous form. Research addendum. I was drawn to the coastal caves after witnessing a water spout shoot off into the ocean at greater velocity than anything I'd witnessed from even the most well-trained Blastoise. As I clambered over the tough and rocky cliffside, I came upon what I at first thought was any other Hypersur. I steadied myself, but it seemed to take no notice of me. It appeared to have recently undergone a metamorphosis, with a new form awakening out of the old. It was intimidating, to be sure, but also amazing. It was as if the stars themselves had aligned to give this new form life from within our average Hypersur. For this design on Awakened Hypersur, I wanted to evolve all of the concepts that we had brought into play. No longer just a Super Soaker blaster, but a Super Soaker turret, cannon, bazooka thing. I don't know, I think it's really cool. This form is awakened when the stars align just right and the sky becomes clear. So I needed to find a way to move all of the pieces that we've done so far and acknowledge not just Hypersur, but Hypeon as well. That's something that I actually really enjoy about Gigantamax and Megaforms, is that they will often take into account more aspects from the previous forms. So I took the triple cannon from Hypeon and combined that with the single massive cannon of Hypersur to make a walking turret that dwarfs its previous forms. For someone like a Scorpio who takes the logic of a situation and strategizes around it accordingly, finding a Pokemon that is literally more than the sum of those parts throws all the rules out the window and allows for a new type of understanding. Learning that we were wrong, or that we were something we didn't take into account, can be difficult. It can be stressful. But truthfully, learning to adapt to these changes and grow through them can lead to experiences that we may never thought possible. That's kind of what I like doing these astrological forms for. They allow us to think about the personality of the people who reference those to themselves, as well as allow us to look at them when we're not a part of that circle. I think that there's a different aspect of these elements within all of us, regardless of when we were born or what sign that we fall under. And I know that that's the whole deal with astrology, is that it allows us to see those aspects not exclusively to one another, but to see them played out differently throughout one another. And that's why I really enjoy doing this series. It's why I enjoy doing each. I'm an Aries, and I loved that video because it was about me, as selfish as that may sound. And I feel like a lot of these tend to be about me, about all of us, because we are each a part of this astrological story. So I had a ton of fun with this because it really helped me understand that weird place that we may find ourselves in. So here's Hypresser in its awakened form. You can see that it has now taken on this full turret type of shape. It has grown substantially since its last form. Still has that really cool shiny. I just love bringing in those grays into that shiny aspect of it. Now, I don't think I've mentioned in any of my other videos how this works, but it is kind of a gimmick like Gigantamax or Mega Forms, where it is a temporarily form that this Pokemon takes. So it will only be during the sign. If you're playing this in your game, I think that it'd be really cool that once the month changes to another, where this sign is no longer the sign for that time, you do have to change. Okay, I got really used to using Hypresser's awakened form. Maybe I need to adapt and bring in a different Pokemon for that form. Maybe I need to bring in the Aries Pokemon, whose name I can't remember. And that means I have to change up my whole team. And I think it's a really dynamic situation and a really dynamic gimmick for any sort of gameplay. I don't know if I'm explaining that right. I hope I am, but if not, someone please let me know in the comments the better way to propose this as a game's gimmick. I really enjoy doing these astrological signs, and we have a couple more to do, but I really enjoyed working on Scorpio because I think it addresses a lot of stuff for not just me, but potentially for everyone, including, like I said, that weird place that we may find ourselves in of learning something new that we didn't before, and how we handle that. I'm actually in one of those weird stages of life right now, with me putting more effort into YouTube and social media. So this design and its many elements means a lot to me. And I have you guys to thank for that, because without you, this opportunity may never have come. And I do consider learning that there's a place for me that may be different than what I'd planned. I do consider that an opportunity. Even more, I consider it a victory. So if you want to be a part of the conversations that make these videos happen, then feel free to join the Discord and become a part of our quickly growing community. I guess I can't really call it a little community anymore, as we have a ton of exciting and talented human beings over there. You can also support me through Ko-fi or Patreon or YouTube memberships, where you'll get access to different exclusives through each. We recently did a Five Nights at Freddy's video where I let the Patreon community vote on who would be in that video. And this design, as well as others, will be available on my Ko-fi, so different stuff everywhere. And with all that out of the way, I'm so glad that you stopped by, and it sounds like you know where to find me. So until next time.
This is Isadora Blue from Pokemon Research Facility 129B. Send help, fit in me.